Good evening. Good evening. We welcome you to tonight's debate sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Lackawanna County. My name is Diana Dakey, our League's current president. We want to thank Keystone College for hosting tonight's debate. I would like to recognize David Coppola, the president of Keystone College, Fran Kalpin, senior director of college relations. Fran did a fabulous job in making all these local arrangements so that we can accommodate all of you and be in this lovely room. I'll just recognize Jeff Brower, professor of the Division of Social and Behavioral Sciences, and his students. There should be many of Jeff's students in the audience. A little bit about the League of Women Voters. We are nonpartisan, which means that we do not support or oppose any political party or candidate. The mission of the League is to promote political responsibility through the informed and active participation by citizens in their government. We encourage you to join the League. Membership information can be found on your program, or there's a membership form here in the inside of your program, or you could go to our website when you go home. That's www.lwvlackawanna.org, and there's a web address here on the front. We would also please encourage you to support our work by making a donation on your way out. Donations help us to cover costs, including taping, so that the debates can be viewed by a wider audience, such as tonight. Cindy will be at the door collecting donations at the close of the debate if you would like to make a donation. ECTV is taping tonight's debate. This is not a live broadcast. The taped debate will be aired on Comcast 19 local TV, so please check the ECTV schedule, which can be found on our website, or you can go to this address here on the front of your program to check the schedule to view tonight's debate and tell your friends about it. And the taped debate will also be available on YouTube via links from our website. As far as upcoming events, the most important upcoming event, of course, is Election Day, Tuesday, November 4th. So don't forget to vote. If you are uncertain as to your registration status, you can go to the Pennsylvania Department of State website, which is votespa.org, VOTESPA.org, and here's where you can put in your zip code and your address, and you can confirm that you are registered and what your polling place is. Then join us for election returns via live broadcast from ECTV. There will be interesting discussion about the elections, and this will start right after the closing of the polls, and Andrea Mulrine will be hosting that talk show that evening. A few procedural items for the audience. Please turn off or silence your phones or any other devices, and please be aware of our policy, our media policy, that no person, candidate, or political group is allowed to use or edit any media from a League of Women Voters event for campaign purposes. Any use of media requires the express written approval of the League of Women Voters. So no excerpts or sound bites may be taken from tonight's debate. Tonight's debate is between the candidates for the 117th Pennsylvania Legislative District. Our moderator, Andrea Mulrine, will introduce the candidates. Andrea is presently employed by the Commonwealth Medical College as Director of Corporate and Foundation Relations. She is the past president of the League of Women Voters of Lackawanna County, a position in which she served for many years. She's currently on our board, and we're very glad we have her ongoing great contribution. So thank you, Andrea.
Thank you, Diana, and welcome everyone. I'm so thrilled to see a full room this evening. That is terrific. And I want to extend my thanks as well to Keystone College. We've been here many times for debates in the past. It's been a couple of years since we've been up here, but they are among the best hosts in Lackawanna County, and I see the president and Fran in the back. So thank you, gentlemen, for your kind support this evening. We truly do appreciate that. Our debates are intended to get beyond the campaign sound bites and inform you, the voter. When watching the debate, we want you to ask yourself questions like these to help you judge the performance of the candidates. Do they answer questions directly, or do they evade them or fail to answer specific questions? Do they give specifics about their stands on the issues, or do they speak in generalities? Do they support their positions and arguments with facts and figures? Do they talk about their own policies and positions, or do they mostly talk about their opponents? Are their proposals realistic? Can they actually carry out the promises they are making? And do they show how their backgrounds and experience qualify them to hold the office? So these are all the things that we think about when we're writing questions and when we're hosting debates, and we hope that you will also consider those questions as well. This debate will be approximately a 60-minute debate. The candidates will answer the same set of questions, and no questions were given to the candidates in advance. All questions will have a 90-second response limit, and each candidate will be allowed up to 3 rebuttals of 1 minute each. They can use the full 3-minute allotment at one time if desired, or they can use them 1 minute at a time, whatever they prefer. But I've told them there's no saving it up for the end for a longer closing statement, and there's no phone a friend or lifeline or anything along those lines. There will be no opening statements from our candidates, and the candidates will be allowed a 2-minute closing statement. We ask you to hold your applause until your candidate has given their closing statement at the end. I do have a lot of questions. I will not get through all of them, so if you hold your applause, it helps us to just get a little bit further along with what we want to ask. So with that, our candidates this evening are incumbent Representative Karen Boback, and she is on the Republican ticket, and Laura Dickson on the Democratic ticket. So ladies, this evening, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your commitment to democracy and your willingness to come and debate with us this evening. Thank you. So let me first start by introducing Karen Boback. They're seated on the podium in alphabetic order. Karen is actually a doctor, has earned her PhD from the University of Pennsylvania, along with master's degrees from Marywood and from Misericordia Universities, and a bachelor's degree from Misericordia as well. She's a former inspector of elections for Harveys Lake Borough, and she has been in this office since 2007. She was a public school educator, a teacher and guidance counselor from 1973 to 2006, and has served as an adjunct professor at Wilkes University and also Misericordia University. There is much on her resume pertaining to civic experience and to volunteerism. I will not go through all of that. I'm sure it's available on your website as well. Laura Dickson, the opponent in this particular race, is from Tunkhannock. She attended Keystone College. She has been the county auditor since 2010, and her professional experience is a 30-year career in hospitality management, most recently with NCS Healthcare. She has been a legislative representative to the Pennsylvania Association of County Auditors, and also has a significant list of volunteerism and civic engagement as well, and I'm sure, Laura, that that's also available on your website or Facebook or something. So with that, we will move on and get right to the questions. And we drew for who would answer the first question first, and that would be Laura. You will answer the first question first. And I'm going to start by talking about ethics. What does it mean to be a public servant who acts ethically? And is there a difference between what is legal and what is ethical? You have 90 seconds for your response.
There absolutely is the difference between what is ethical and what isn't. It all depends. Every elected official, no matter what the appearance it is you have and whatever you're doing, could be interpreted any way. And we, as elected officials, need to make sure that we're always represent ourselves as professional and within the boundaries of our jobs and our law all the time. I've listened to a lot of folks talk about ethics in a number of programs that I've been in, and the greatest thing is that appearance of impropriety. And if you see or hear someone say something that's you feel is just not correct, or maybe a little bit outside the law, you know, as an elected official, you have to be very careful. I represent all the people in Wyoming County. I want to make sure that I will always do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen, the question to you.
First of all, thank you to the League of Women Voters. This is wonderful, and I'm very appreciative that you have this format for us. And thanks also to Keystone College. By the way, the young men and women here, what a tribute to your professors. I hope you enjoy the debate. Regarding ethics, ethics is something that's within you. It's something that it's your perpetual clock. It's something that goes off like your religion. It's your integrity. It's something that you need to have close and near and dear to you, whatever decision that you shall make, that's your ethical background, your ethical motto, your ethical format of your life. And regarding legislation, if you're creating legislation, you must be ethical.
Okay, thank you. Karen, the next question you will answer first as well. And I'm going to continue on ethics a little bit, but we're going to talk about a gift ban now, okay? Mm-hmm. So over the past decade, Pennsylvania government has been overwhelmed, as we all know, by a train of scandals, many that have been tied to campaign contributions and gifts. According to the National Conference of State Legislators, Pennsylvania is one of only 10 states that has no limits on gifts, and 10 states have full gift bans. 30 states restrict giving in some way. What is your position on receiving gifts?
Well, right now there's legislation in the state Senate, and of course we're at the end of session, but I imagine it will bring itself up again in January, and that has to do with addressing the problem that occurred this past spring, where it was shown that certain people did accept bracelets or different types of gifts, and it was just something that certainly cannot go on. It certainly has to be addressed, and it will be through legislation. But I do want you to know that the state of Pennsylvania has the ethics form that we all have to fill out once a year, whether we're running for office or not. Not only myself, but those who work for me need to fill out an ethics form. Also, there's a financial disclosure statement that I must give as a candidate, and also running for office, whether I'm running or whether I'm not. I must keep tabs on anything that would come my way. As far as gifts, they're so unnecessary. To me, it's just a no-brainer, no gifts, period. However, there is legislation in the works.
Thank you. Laura, the question to you.
I remember back in the 90s when I was working as a vice president for an institutional pharmacy company, and there was a new rule that came out. It's called Safe Harbor, and it was all about the ethical gift giving to doctors and to doctors' offices. And so this is something I've always been very conscious of, and especially, I am, as an elected official, I would never accept a gift because that you always wonder if there is going to be something asked from you in return. Unfortunately, in our legislature and in our federal government, we see this happen all the time. We need to, and I'm glad to hear that there's legislation coming to stop that. Our governors, our presidents, our senators, we need to make sure that we do not owe anybody anything, not our votes, and that special interests are not important to us. We have to do what our constituents want us to do, and that's why I think it's so important that we make sure that gift giving is not something that we're allowed to do or that we do.
Okay, thank you. The next question will go to Laura first, and I'm going to keep kind of in the light of ethics, but I want to talk about judicial accountability and specifically merit selection of judges, okay? So in light of recent judicial scandals, such as the conviction of former Justice Joan Ori Melvin for using court resources for political purposes, and also the most recent scandal pertaining to Justice McCaffrey with his email, given that, can one argue that judges are elected on the strength of political factors and little to do with professional suitability for the job? Do you support or oppose merit selection of judges, and why or why not? And the question goes to Laura.
I don't support merit selection of judges. I still think that our voters of our state should have the right to put in office who they need to put in office and who they want to put in office. I think that if we just did it with merit, it would be one party would have more control over, if they were in power, of putting who they wanted on the bench. I think it's important that we continue to allow our judges to be voted on.
Okay, thank you. Karen, the question goes to you.
And at this point, I do feel that it has to go through the democratic process. I feel I want the right to choose who is going to be the judicial candidate or the judge that will eventually serve in this Commonwealth. When they go through, when someone runs to become a judge, they truly vet themselves. I remember when the last judiciary election came through, people came through our counties, we met, I got to go online, I got to study their biographies, I got to ask questions, I got to send questions and get answers, and then when I was allowed to vote, I felt comfortable with my choice. And again, I feel that's a part of the democratic process, that we have the right, based on the merits that we perceive, to select our judges.
Okay, thank you. The next question, we're going to move away from these topics now and on to one that's near and dear to everyone's heart, and that's taxes. And Karen, you'll answer this question first. So let's talk about property tax reform. A drive to replace school property taxes with a combination of a higher state sales tax and state income tax continues. House Senate Bill 76 is on the table and proposes to raise the state personal income tax by 1.27%, increase the state sales tax by 1%, place sales tax on some previously untaxed items, and abolish the authority of school boards to levy property taxes. So what do you see as the pros and cons of this bill?
Well, I'm a proud co-sponsor of this bill, and I've been a sponsor of this bill since I came into the legislature, because something's got to be done. People are losing their homes. I happen to be 63 years old. I'm a senior citizen, and I see many of my neighbors that live in my neighborhood that are losing their homes to property tax, school property tax specifically, and that's got to be addressed. Right now, House Bill, it's actually Senate Bill 76. We had the matchup in the House, but Senate Bill 76 made its way further in 1 year than that bill has gotten through the two chambers in at least 10. So we know the interest is there. People want it to happen. They want to at least have the opportunity to shift the tax to something that is much more favorable, something that's more affordable. Do you realize that I read a study just a while ago, and it said that if you're paying $3,500 in taxes, you'd actually have to pay $50,000 in new taxed items to come up with the $3,500 in school property tax. It's an antiquated system, ladies and gentlemen. We've got to get rid of it. It's not fair. It's not something that we should be relying on for our children in our schools, and we can't afford to lose any more properties. Thank you.
Laura, the question to you.
I do believe that we need to eliminate our property taxes, especially for our seniors. They are on the verge of losing their homes. We cannot continually increase taxes burdens on our citizens. 10 years, I'm surprised to hear it's been around for 10 years and it hasn't been done. I don't know of anyone out here in this audience that owns properties that don't agree that it should have been gone now. So this is something I will work on when I'm elected and I go to Harrisburg. I will make sure that that bill gets voted on any way I possibly can. I will work tirelessly for us to eliminate our property taxes once and for all.
And if I may, and the reason why it's taken so long, because you have to look at every side of the issue. You're looking at property tax that's being substituted with sales tax. You have to realize that some parts of the state already have a penny more sales tax than we have in our region. So because of that, the numbers have to fit. It has to go through a vetting process, and it has. And I want to correct myself just in case. The study I read lately was 3,500 school property taxes. It would take at least $50,000 in new taxed items, and I'm not quite sure I said 50,000, so thank you, I wanted to clarify. But that's what good legislation is. You don't just throw something against the wall and say it's going to stick. It has to be vetted because you want to make life better, not worse, for the people you serve.
Thank you. Okay, let's talk also, we're going to stay on the tax issue, but let's move along to a severance tax. And Laura, Laura, you'll answer thank you. You'll answer this question first. So, do you support a severance tax on natural gas or other forms of natural resource extraction? And if Pennsylvania were to enact a severance tax, how would you recommend the funds be used?
I am in support of a severance tax on natural gas industry. There are 11 states that have the natural gas industry operating in them, and Pennsylvania is number 11 for how much we tax the natural gas industry. It's approximately 1.9%. The highest state is 11%. I think that what's been talked about, the 5% on natural gas extraction tax, is where I think we should be. It's not going to overburden the industry. They can afford to pay it. And we need to use that money to support our educational system. I hope that when it is enacted, that we also make sure that we look at how it's enacted. We need to tax the gas at the wellhead, not after it's had the water taken out of it and the other impurities, and it's always less. So we need to make sure we actually know what we're taxing.
Okay, thank you. Karen, the question goes to you.
Well, right now there is much discussion going on about the potential of a severance tax. And when I look at severance tax, and I do compare it with other states in the nation that has it, I have to think about it in terms, in Pennsylvania we have a corporate net income tax, personal income tax, taxes that other states don't have. I also look at my surrounding states like West Virginia and Ohio that have a severance tax. So I think if we have one in the Commonwealth, it's got to be comparable to the states that are surrounding us. Not more, not less, but comparable, taking into consideration the taxes that we charge the industry. Number two, I represent Wyoming County. Wyoming County is an impacted county, and they have an impact fee. So if I were to consider severance, I would probably consider somewhere around 5%. 5% yield would probably approximate about $600 million. With that, I would carve out the impact fee for all impacted counties. They rely on it, they need it, they're the ones who are impacted directly by the industry. I would also hold harmless the property owner. The property owner will not, as far as I'm concerned, should not be responsible for the tax. That tax is for the industry. So I would carve out the counties that are impacted, and I would hold harmless the property owner. Then I would consider the potential of a severance tax.
Okay, thank you. Let's continue talking about natural gas drilling, and I want to talk specifically about methane. And Karen, you'll answer this question first. Methane leakage associated with natural gas drilling impacts air quality and threatens to undo the potential climate benefits of using natural gas in place of other fossil fuels. Earlier this year, Colorado adopted rules crafted by a coalition of energy companies and environmental groups that require oil and gas companies to use available technologies to reduce methane emissions and other air pollution from their operations. Would you support development of new rules that would require natural gas companies to reduce methane emissions?
Absolutely. Now, we are doing that to an extent here in the Commonwealth, but I do like the Colorado model, and yes, I would certainly support that.
Thank you. Laura, the question to you.
We need to support that. Our health, our children's health, our grandchildren's health depend on us making sure that the gas industry does it responsibly and safely for all of us. It's time that these kinds of things have been put on the table, and we make sure that it happens. So yes, I support this.
Okay. Laura, you'll answer this next question first. We'll move on to economic development now, specifically talk about the minimum wage, okay? So 23 states, including all of Pennsylvania's neighboring states, have raised the minimum wage over past years. Pennsylvania's minimum wage remains at $7.25. The Times Tribune reported in October that more than 75,000 people in northeastern Pennsylvania, or about 20% of the workforce, labor for a minimum wage that has an inflation-adjusted value, making it roughly 23% lower in real dollars than it was in 1968. What is your position on increasing the state's minimum wage? And Laura, the question is yours.
I support increasing our minimum wage in Pennsylvania. Our surrounding states are already in the process of raising their minimum wage. If our residents tend to want a better wage, they're going to leave and go to Jersey or go to New York and receive that wage. When our minimum wage employees go out of our state for a higher wage, the next thing you find out is that your employers can find employees so that our businesses leave next. We need to be competitive in Pennsylvania, and that's why we have to make sure that anybody that's working 40 hours a week receives a paycheck that can support themselves. And that's what the minimum wage can do. And I do support raising the minimum wage.
Thank you. Karen, the question goes to you.
Thank you. Who doesn't support raising the minimum wage? But the idea is, how do you raise it, when do you raise it, and when do you raise it again? I looked at the federal government. Perhaps they should have the standard. And with the standard, they would have perhaps the ability to bring it up with the rate of inflation over a period of a year or two. So maybe the federal government should look at this more realistically than they are. Number two, should we do it in Pennsylvania like some of the surrounding states? $3, is it enough? Is it too much? Where do you go with that? Now, I interviewed some workers who, God bless them, are making the minimum wage. And certainly they need to make more, there's no question. But then I spoke with their employer, and the one employer said to me, do you realize if I raise, he had 10 employees, if I raise the rate $3 an hour, that's $24 each of my employees per day, $120 per employee a week, and at the end of the year, that's $6,000 or times 10, $60,000. He said, I will do it. They deserve it. But I will have to lay off 3 so I can pay for those. So it's not an easy fix. Something has to be done once again, but the devil is in the details. How do we do it without closing businesses, without getting people laid off or losing their jobs? And I do want to say in regard to this, whatever we do, we got to make sure that it's equal pay for women and men, equal pay when we do address the debacle of the minimum wage.
Thank you. Let's continue talking about economic development and specifically jobs. And Karen, you'll answer this question first. Where do you think the jobs of the future will be in Pennsylvania? And what can Harrisburg do directly and or indirectly to incentivize job creation?
Well, right now, all we hear about is the job creation by the Marcellus Shell. And I believe that to be true. The industry is here, and there are many jobs that are not only here now, but they're being created. If you go to local universities, I'm sure Keystone is probably in with some of their programs now to train the future with this industry that's in its infancy stage. So there are jobs there, and there will be good paying jobs. We've just got to make sure that we're training the workforce in accordance with what is out there. But I also see not only the industry, we are taking off. Ladies and gentlemen, we are coming out of this recession with a bang. That's what I truly believe. With the transportation bill that we passed, we will have an infrastructure that will be second to none. Other states come to Pennsylvania to find out, what about our legislation? How did the bill become enacted? What are you going to do with the Act 89 money? Intermodal? That's even included in the bill. This is something so huge, ladies and gentlemen, that we do have the industry, we have the natural resource, we will have the infrastructure, we will build it, they will come. And we all know that our workforce, particularly in northeastern PA, is second to none.
Thank you. Laura, the question goes to you.
It's very important that we create jobs. We went from being 10th in new job creations to now we're 50th in all the United States. That's the last. And I hear our representative talk about job creation, and I can't see it. I'm sorry. We need jobs in our industry, in our state, and in our district especially. And I think one of the ways we could do it is by helping the true job creators in our district, the small businesses, giving them the tax breaks instead of giving tax breaks to the largest corporations who do not pay any tax in our state. because they have the lawyers that they just don't do it, and they're incorporated in other states. We need to make sure that the jobs that are important, we don't need just to have gas drilling jobs. We need to have high-tech jobs. We need white-collar jobs. We need manufacturing jobs. And to do that is to give our businesses, and especially our small businesses, incentives and support in doing that.
Thank you. Karen?
Yes, and I thought I made myself perfectly clear, perhaps I didn't, when I talked about the infrastructure. That was the biggest holdback that we had in this state. People did not want to come. They couldn't get their product from point A to point B. Now they will. As I said, even with intermodal, that includes your trains, that includes your air freight. This is huge, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, you wouldn't be aware of that because you're not in the predicament that I am in. So bless your heart. You know, you got to see it from one vantage point, and I get to see it from that point too with the small businesses. But I get to see it in a different perspective with NEPA Alliance, with Benjamin Franklin Institute, what they're doing for our industries. So they are coming. And as I said, you build it, they will come.
Thank you. Laura, did you want to rebut?
No.
Okay. Let's talk now, let's turn to education. We're in an educational institution here. So let's start out by talking about pension reform. And Laura, you'll answer this question first. So school districts around the state are cutting staff and educational services in order to afford the high pension contribution rates to the Pennsylvania Public School Employee Retirement System, an obligation that was created by the legislature itself. The shortfall is estimated at $50 billion, that's with a B, across the state. How should the legislature address this problem? Laura, the question to you.
Our pension problem was caused by our state deciding not to pay into the pension fund. It was not created by the folks, our public employees, our teachers, and all our firemen. It was, they have faithfully paid into the pension fund. And now, because of the state and our school districts deciding to take a holiday and not pay taxes for 10 years, we have a pension problem. How we can fix that in the future, we need to look at some consolidation of programs. If we can consolidate our health insurance coverage and plans for our employee funds, we could save $600 million a year, and that would help pay down our pension cost.
Thank you. Karen?
I agree. That was Act 9 of 2001 where the debacle began with our pensions, when we should have been putting in our fair share as well as schools for the teaching population, but it wasn't done. The employees put in their fair share. They put in what they were supposed to put in, but the match wasn't there because at that time the stock market was doing well, and it was felt that let the stock market take care of it. I wasn't in the legislature at the time, but I did my homework, and that was the beginning of the problem. So now we are in arrears. Now we've got the problem, so what do we do with it? We've got to do something. We've got to do something, ladies and gentlemen. We did initiate what was called Act 120 of 2010, and that was a great start. Now, that put the onus more on the new employees. They're putting more into the system. It's taking them longer to get to the point where they could take out of the system, but it is starting to balance itself. It's starting to rectify itself through that wonderful Act 120. But there's more that we have to do. I, for myself, introduced legislation whereby I truly believe that the slots money, we were all promised relief. Do you remember that? Property tax relief when gaming came to the Commonwealth. How much relief are you getting? I think I get $92 a year, I think, on my homestead. I know different school districts get different money back, but that's the problem. So I want to revisit. I was stopped, I'm sorry. See me afterwards, I'll tell you what I'm doing.
So, Karen, we're going to continue to talk about education, and you get to answer this question first, so it might follow along with what you're talking about. And let's talk about teacher strikes. So schools districts deal with the threat of teacher strikes every year. Last best offer binding arbitration has been suggested as a means to achieve contracts that are fair to teachers and taxpayers. Should lawmakers take action to outlaw strikes in favor of last best offer binding arbitration? Karen, the question is yours.
That was Act 88 of 1992, and as a result of not having binding arbitration, any type of negotiation had the potential of going on and on. Not only had the potential, has the potential, and does many times go on and on and on. So you have employees going 5 years without a contract. You have boards that are trying their best. You have the teachers' unions trying their best. But for one reason or another, in the year 2014, we still see strikes. I say last best offer, binding arbitration.
Laura, the question to you.
I support the right for any public employee to use any portion of their legally negotiated contract. However, I would like to see some more guidelines for negotiations for our unions and our employers. This could help stop strikes. They're not good for anyone.
Okay. The next question, Laura, will go to you first. And let's continue talking about education. So in polls, education ranks as one of voters' top concerns. Reform proposals directed at the classroom include tenure reform and educational standards. What legislation do you feel should be enacted at the state level to improve public education in the classroom?
Well, first of all, we've got to fund education at a level where we can provide the level of education that we need in this state. So many times right now we're eliminating programs in our educational system. So funding is going to be a big part of that. Legislation to increase. I know that there is a lot of talk about what core education and making sure that our students our teachers are teaching to a test. We need to make sure our students are learning, but we also need to give our teachers some leeway on how that's done.
Thank you. Karen, the question goes to you.
Well, in June, it was legislated that a commission would begin to study the funding mechanism of our public school system. And that is the beginning. That is the big part that we need to get addressed, hopefully by the beginning or at least the middle of the next session. Going around the state, supervisors, superintendents are being interviewed by this commission to find out what is the best practice and how we could fund our students, how we could fund our schools. There was a costing out study at one time, didn't work. There was a hold harmless, and that's where a school district who had a set amount of students would get a certain amount of funding, but the following year they might lose 20, 30, 50 students, but because they were held harmless, they would keep the same amount of funding as they did the year before, whereas the next school district might have gained the 25 or 30 students, so that became a problem. We're dealing with cyber schools. We're dealing with charter schools. How do you take money to fit into a cyber, which is coming from your bricks and mortar building, and now going to cyber? That has to be addressed too, to make it fair and equitable for all. So this funding mechanism is going to be a help to all who get to make the decision how we fund public education. My time is coming, so I'm going to say one more thing. How can we all help? Go to the State Department of Education website. They're looking for input. They're going to give you examples of questions on standardized testing. They want your input. Go and do it so that in the end you could say, I had a play in the education. Stop. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on now and talk about municipalities. So we all know that, and Karen, this question goes to you first, and Act 47. Obviously, Scranton is in a distressed status. Scranton has been a distressed city since 1992. Also, Nanticoke, West Hazelton, and Plymouth Township have Act 47 status as well, fiscally distressed. So House Bill 1773 to overhaul Act 47 was approved this month and sent to the governor for signing. And the proposed changes would make some significant changes to the bill. including a limit on how long a city could stay in distress status. But the changes don't provide help to deal with the systemic problems such as a diminished urban tax base, disproportional burden of essential services to the wider geographic area, and inadequately funded municipal pension plans. So having said all of that, the question is, do you feel this legislation is adequate to help distressed cities, not only in northeastern Pennsylvania, but it impacts us across the state? And explain your answer. Describe what else you feel is the future role of Harrisburg in this crisis, which is really happening all across the Commonwealth.
Well, you gave the rationale as to why I voted against it, and I did. I voted against it because I didn't feel it went far enough. I looked at the tax structure and I thought, wait a minute, people are leaving cities because of the taxes. So what else can we do for these cities? And then I thought, there's such a thing called an institutional district. Do you realize that in major cities, like Scranton, Nanticoke, cities that are surrounding us, they host a variety of vital, essential, nonprofit institutions. They're vital, but they're nonprofit. And I think we have to spread that throughout the county because it's so difficult for the city to pick up the tab on the nonprofits that are necessary, that need to be there. They're centrally located, but that I feel has to be spread out. I also feel that hopefully the state, or I would like to suggest that the state look at the pensions with the idea that we could put them all under a statewide plan, or at least look at the potential of that, because the administrative costs alone to run these pensions, it's cost prohibitive. So I would like to see the state at least look at that or suggest that they consider putting these pensions under a plan.
Thank you. Laura, the question goes to you.
There is a problem with the non-for-profits, colleges, hospitals, institutions in our cities. And we can look at downtown Scranton. It is, how much of it is taken up by the University of Scranton, which is a non-for-profit. Now they do pay the city something, but there's no set amount. And you can't plan any budget unless you know what to forecast for. And I think that that's a situation, and that is one plan, is to spread that out throughout your county, and to make sure that everyone's paying for a part of that, because those are jobs, and not folks that just work in this, live in the city, work at these facilities, but people that live in all our communities. So and it's so important to have these kinds of institutions in our counties and in our area. It helps us all grow, and it helps bring other new people, new businesses to our area. I also would like to see the consolidation for the plans, the insurance plans, health insurance plans, and the other state-funded plans be consolidated, because they will reduce costs for administrative costs especially.
Okay, thank you. Laura, we're going to stay on the topic of municipalities, and this next question will go to you first. So related to Act 47 to help distressed cities is legislation to overhaul the Act 111 collective bargaining process for police and firefighters. And the basic objective of this reform is to give local governments more leverage in the arbitration process and to open the process to the public. And there are a lot of different points in the bill overall. But what is your position on proposed reforms to the collective bargaining process?
We need to make sure that each side, the employees and the employer side, have an opportunity to negotiate. But we need to make sure that they have a result. We need to put guidelines in so that they will have to sit down and negotiate, and they cannot just put it off and continue until it does lead to a strike. There needs to be time frames.
Okay, Karen, the question goes to you.
May I clarify, was that Act 111?
Yes, reforms to Act 111.
Act 111 has been in effect for 45 years, so perhaps it would be wise to at least look at it to check to see how we can make it more fair and equitable. But right now that would be hypothetical on my part, because I would like to read that legislation I understand there's something in the Senate as far as looking at it and at least the discussion stages, but I don't want to be hypothetical. I'd rather read that legislation before I comment. All I could say is, perhaps to answer your question, whatever comes out of that act, whether it be revamped, whether it be amended, whatever, as long as it's fair and equitable to all sides.
Okay, thank you. The next question, Karen, will go to you first. And let's move on and let's talk about state reform. And the first reform that I want to talk about is pertains to the liquor stores. So Pennsylvania is only one of 2 states, the other being Utah, that maintains absolute wholesale and retail distribution of wine and liquor. Is the current system effective, and would you privatize or make other changes? Is there a need for any kind of change?
Well, the liquor privatization bill did pass through the House, but it stalled in the Senate. While it was stalling in the Senate, everyone started to look at money. Show me the money is the bottom line. Where would the state make more money? Realizing how many employees would be lost, what would happen there, would they be phased out, whatever. But show me the money where we would make in the end result after we get through that hurdle of our employees should it privatize itself. What I'm listening to now and what I hear more discussion with is modernization. And I think that might be something that might be even more viable, to modernize the liquor store. As far as the state owning it, again, it's a moneymaker. How much money are we making now as opposed to modernization? I want to see those facts and figures. Again, show me the money. Realizing that we also have employees that we would have to look out phasing. Would it be a process where it would phase itself out for 10 years? That was in the discussion stages. Would it go from privatization 5 years completely to modernization, or would it just go strictly private? So there are different discussions on the floor, but my bottom line is show me the money. Where will we make more as a state?
Okay, thank you. Laura, the question to you.
We need to modernize our state liquor system, but we do not need to privatize it. It is a revenue stream for our state, and once it's gone, it will be gone. It provides money to finance programs for our seniors, and when our governor tried to sell it, that cost our taxpayers approximately $6 million just in legal fees. And then it was struck down by the courts and said it was illegal. We need to keep our liquor store. We need to modernize them. We need to make them more customer friendly. And in the businesses I've always been in, you have to make sure your customers are taken care of. If they're happy, they'll be there for you, and we will grow that business and grow those revenues, and then we will all benefit, especially our seniors.
Okay, thank you. Karen?
Yes, and I think, were you talking about the lottery? Did you bring was
No.
that what you were referring to with selling?
No, oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, it
I
wasn't not selling, but privatizing.
Okay,
and
thank
then
you.
those would have gone out. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I just wanted to clarify
Yes,
that.
I'm sorry.
And I also wanted to clarify, too, remember, we have over 3,000 state employees working, so the phase-out would have to be considered. And there again, where would we be making more money, modernization or privatization? So you have to worry about your employees, you have to worry about the money, and then you would worry about accessibility. To me, that would be the last thing you would consider.
Okay, thank you. So I want to continue on talking about reform. And in this instance, I want to talk about redistricting reform. And Laura, this question will go to you first. We're all impacted by redistricting. Once every 10 years, there's a census. The lines are redrawn for all of our districts. I don't know about you, but I've looked at the maps. I can't tell you how many times to figure out where the changes were in Lackawanna County. It certainly impacted the work that we, with the League of Women Voters, do as well. So my question for you is, would you support redistricting efforts to prevent gerrymandering and would give preference to plans that ensure legislative districts are politically competitive? And specifically, in order to change how we district, requires a constitutional amendment. Would you be in favor of working on a constitutional amendment, which takes about 3 years years to get through, a minimum of 3 years, before the next time that we need to redistrict after the, I can't believe I'm saying this, 2020 census. We're that close to it. So the question first goes to you, Laura.
Absolutely, we have to do something about gerrymandering. Have you seen what our congressional district looks like? It goes from Wyoming County all the way down below Harrisburg almost. It is unbelievable, and it doesn't make any sense. I know that there's been proposals of creating a committee, a group of folks that will oversee redistricting, made up of 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats and 1 non-affiliated person to oversee it. And this is something that I could get behind. Every 10 years that we redistrict, and I know it has a lot to do with population, and if we have the population growth in our area, well, yes, I could see then. But why don't we do it and leave it alone for a while? I just cannot believe every time you turn around, you don't know who's your representative, and where our district lines are.
Okay, thank you. Karen, the question goes to you.
I just don't like that word gerrymandering, and I'll tell you why. Every state representative has approximately 62,000 constituents. Now, when I first was elected, my district was, in fact, it still is until the next election, my present district is 672 square miles. It starts up in Windham, if you know where Windham is, near Wyalusing or Laceyville, that area. Then it comes down and it goes through the back mountain. It goes down through Shikshini, Makanakwa, New Angola, Nescapac. It goes down to another county called Columbia, where I had Benton Township, Benton Borough. It goes through Shikshini, as I said, it goes through Mountaintop. Then I cross over I-80 and I have a place called Penn Lake Park and Dorrance, which is up by Bear Creek. Now, you could say gerrymandering, but I'll tell you how that happens, because my first year I was running, I was going door to door, which I love to do. Now I get it because I realize that places are spread out. So I would start up in Windham, and I would knock on the door. My husband would drive the car, and there would be one gentleman there, just lost his wife, one voter, and I would say, hello, sir, I'm Karen Boback, running for. Okay, so I got to see him, get in the car, maybe about 4 miles or 5 miles down the road, we'd be at another house, knock at the door, there was a husband and wife. Now we have 3 constituents, have to have 62,000, and so on and so forth. I'm a rural legislator, ladies and gentlemen, so of course it is so spread out. If I were in Philadelphia, I would probably be city blocks. But what I'm trying to get at is, that's how you come up with the 62,000. It has to be contiguous, and that's another reason why they look so spread out, but it has to be contiguous. But I'm always looking at making a system better, and I would certainly be open to looking at a commission like that.
Thank you so much. Let's continue talking about voting reform. And Karen, this one will go to you first. So I want to talk about no excuse absentee voting. Voting is a right, yet few Pennsylvanians are permitted to vote by absentee ballot. In 26 states, voters already are permitted to vote by absentee ballot without providing an excuse. In Pennsylvania, only those voters who swear that they will not be in their home county during the hours which the polls are open due to job requirements, illness, or religious holiday are permitted to vote by absentee ballot. Are you in favor of any changes to the absentee ballot rules? And if yes, will you introduce legislation? Karen, it goes to you.
I really have to think about that, because do no harm, that's always in the back of my mind, do no harm. But I can't see where this would cause harm. I had a woman who was 95 years old say to me, I think I can make it to the polls, but maybe I should but I don't want to get an absentee. I said, ma'am, take an absentee. If you get to the polls, you just show yourself, they will take your absentee and they will rip it in front of you. So you've got it made. You get to vote. I'm all about absentee ballots in this day and age. The way our lifestyles are, we just had a gentleman, God bless him, lost his wife yesterday. Our friends are right here, and the same thing happened with him. He never missed an election. Bless his heart for being such an integral part of the democratic process. So I haven't read the legislation. I always hold that. I do my homework, ladies and gentlemen, all my students in here. But I do feel, based on what you're telling me, how could you deny something like that?
Okay. Laura, the question goes to you.
We should have absentee ballot. voting and make it easier. Anything to make voting easier. It is our right, and we have all changed our lifestyles. I would love to see it go further. The right to vote is all of our rights. And the easier we make it, the more people will get involved. Our young people need to be involved. Our older folks, that everyone needs to be involved. And liberalizing any way to vote I would be very supportive, and I would work on that legislation.
And if I may, how do we do?
You used all your rebuttals.
Oh, did I? Oh.
Sorry. I have one last question, and then we're going to move on to closing statements. So Laura, you'll answer this question first. And I want to talk about sunshine law enforcement. So again, about government reform. Pennsylvania recently passed an open records law, which provides an enforcement agency to protect the rights of citizens requesting government records. It also helps protect agencies when asked to provide records that are shielded from public access for security or privacy reasons. On the other hand, the Pennsylvania Open Meetings, or the Sunshine Law, has no agency to enforce the law or protect citizens' access to governmental meetings. Citizens' only recourse is to ask the district attorney to take action, which is rarely agreed to by the district attorney, or to file a potentially expensive civil suit in court. The mission of the Office of Open Records could possibly be expanded by statute to enforce the Sunshine Law as well. So the question for you is, do you think there's a change that's needed to help enforce the Sunshine Law? Why or why not? And Laura, the question goes to you first.
Well, from what you've said, if there is no support for those, there has to be. I know that just down here at Lackawanna Trail, that they had a problem with the sunshine laws and the school boards and having meetings without the public's knowledge and discussing things that should have been discussed in the public meeting. Now, if they have no recourse but to go to the DA and the DA will not prosecute, then yes, we need to create a commission that can control that and monitor that and make sure that the citizens understand what's going on, and it's not done in secrecy. None of our government, any way, should be done in secrecy. We are the voters. We are the ones that pay the taxes here, and we are the ones that need to know everything that's going on in our government. We shouldn't have anything hidden from us.
Thank you. Karen, the question goes to you.
And I do believe in transparency in government. And if I'm not mistaken, that legislation was also brought up and didn't have an opportunity to be voted upon, but that's something that I do believe will come up in the new session.
Okay, thank you. That includes our Q&A for this evening, and we can move on to closing statements. We did draw X's, I guess, to say. It wasn't a straw, it was an X, prior to the start of the debate. And Laura will give the first closing statement. And Laura, you have 2 minutes for your closing statement now.
I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters and Keystone College for inviting us here tonight and hosting this. And I'd like to thank Karen Boback for being here also. And I'd like to thank the audience for your attendance. Tonight, we talked about a lot of very important issues facing our Commonwealth and our district. There's one important difference between me and my opponent. She has had 8 years to make the changes to helping our unemployment rate, to reduce that. She's had 8 years to give us tax relief for our property taxes. And my opponent has had 8 years to enact her plans. In the last 4 years, our governor and our legislatures have made it easier for our corporations not to pay taxes, but not for you. Our middle class folks need relief, and that's something I want to go to Harrisburg and help with. House Bill 76 is a very important bill to help so many folks with their property taxes. the help they really need before they do lose their homes. But that bill still sits in Harrisburg collecting dust. It's time that that bill was taken out and voted on. I will help restore and work on restoring funding to education. I ask for your vote on November 4th, and I will go to Harrisburg and I will represent your values and your visions and my visions for our future for Pennsylvania. Thank you.
Thank you. That's Laura Dickson. Thank you, Laura, the Democratic candidate for the 117th representative. Thank you so much. And Karen Boback, your 2-minute closing statement.
It's an honor and a pleasure to be a part of the legislature. It's as if my entire life got me to this point. My educational background, my professional background, my personal background, bringing me here into this wonderful, wonderful venue of making legislation, and not only making it, seeing it work within our communities where we live. Over the course of this past year, I should say over the course of 8 years, I got to be a part of so much wonderful legislation that helps make this Commonwealth a better place to live. But over the past year, I had 2 exciting bills that were written into law. The first is the pulse oximetry bill. The pulse oximetry bill, ladies and gentlemen, if I do nothing else in my life, that will save lives. That is one of the biggest things that could have happened in this Commonwealth. That's where you monitor the baby's oxygen as soon as they're born, within the 24 to 48 hours. It's non-invasive, and it goes to check and monitor how that baby's oxygen's going through the heart. Bottom line is, #1 killer of our babies is congenital heart defects. This bill will save lives, and God bless our governor signed it into law. Another bill I'm so proud of, just signed into law approximately a month ago, was the high tunnel bill, asked for by our farmers. The high tunnel bill, you get to see them on the highway. They look like they're different ovals coming out of the ground. What it does is, it's a temporary structure, but it extends the growth season for our farmers. #1 industry in Pennsylvania, ag. Can you imagine? That was not considered a farming mechanism, and therefore it could have been taxed by the construction code. The bill passed. It is a farming building. Now our farmers get to expand their growth season. 2 wonderful bills. The one that I didn't have the opportunity to see passed into law, but God willing in the future perhaps I will, is the Marcellus Shell Health Registry. That was ready for prime time, but just didn't make it through, and that's a necessity for our entire Commonwealth. So I thank you very much. I see the stop sign. I'll wait here if you have any questions for me, but wow, that's the fastest I've spoken in a while.
How about a round of applause for both of our candidates for their commitment to democracy? Thank you so much. And once again, I'd like to thank Keystone College for hosting us today. You can see this on YouTube at lwvlackawanna.org and also on ECTV if you're in the Comcast section. You can get that through your cable station. If you appreciate the work that we do, we ask for a contribution on your way out the door if you can help us cover some of our expenses. Thank you so much. Don't forget to vote.